Hello and welcome to Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind. This is episode 234. I'm your co-host, Russ.
And the last time I looked, I am still your co-host, Mike, but I'm really not sure anymore. It's been a rough week.
Losing your identity over there?
Kind of. I'm losing my mind, I think. But good old classical music is there to restore it, I think.
Hopefully this episode will set you straight over there and everyone else out there listening. Before we get into any new things, I want to go back to last week and send out a big thanks to John Bishop at Origin Records for sharing our episode last week on the Origin Facebook page. Origin has about the best homepage of any record company out there. They always have complete recording information for the releases, artist profiles for both the Origin and their OA2 label. And they also have a collection of reviews that you can browse separately. And John has included a lot of adult music review summaries there, so that's much appreciated too.
Yeah, and we love them anyway.
Yeah, last week we talked about the Affinity Trio with Eric Jacobson, great trumpeter. We talked about Ted Piltzecker, vibraphonist's new recording, and we also talked about Anthony Stanko's new live recording. So if you haven't heard last week's episode, go back. A bunch of great jazz to check out. You don't want to miss those recordings.
Yeah, don't miss the recordings especially. Make sure you hear those.
Absolutely.
They're great. I really like them as well.
And we got a little sad news this week as well. So, as usual, let me get over to the piano here. Tubist Jim Self died November 2nd at the age of 83. Jim Self performed as a soloist, chamber musician in orchestras such as the Pasadena Symphony, the Pacific Symphony, the Los Angeles Opera, and the Hollywood Bowl Orchestra. Most notably, as a studio musician in the Los Angeles movie studios, he appeared on over 1,500 soundtracks, Mike.
Wow.
Plus many recordings in the pop and rock genres, and then in the jazz vein, he led his own recordings as well as playing with musicians like Don Ellis, Billy May, Quincy Jones, Diane Shore, and Maynard Ferguson, just to name a few. A pretty illustrious career for a tubist.
Is that how you say that? A tubist? Like you're kind of in a tube of toothpaste or something? I don't know. I guess.
Not a tuber.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, holding down the low end of the brass section. And he was active right up until recently. I saw a new album released from him not too long ago. So rest in peace, Jim Self.
We'll miss him a lot.
We've got a lot of great music to talk about in this episode. As always, in the episode description, you'll find links to Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music for all of the recordings we're going to discuss tonight. And at the top of the description, there's a link to the full episode playlist. That's all the music in one place on Deezer, CD quality streaming music from France. If you can't see the full description or the recording list and links are hard to follow wherever you're listening to us now, you can always come over and check us out on our host site. That's Podbean, PODBEAN.com. Everything's easy to follow there. If you enjoy the podcast, please follow or subscribe wherever you enjoy listening to us. Tell a music-loving friend as well. Help us grow our audience. If you take a moment to give us a ranking or write a short review, that also helps us get listed in the music category recommendations on the podcast services, and that's another way we can grow our audience. Come and follow us on our Facebook page as well to get extra info and more new releases throughout the week. You can leave a message or comment there, and you can also check us out on X. We're Adult Music Pod over there. I post links to the new episodes every week there. If you'd like to contact us directly with any comments or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is adultmusicpodcast, all one word, @gmail.com. We will play music samples as part of our discussion, and this is our fair use disclaimer. Music sample clips are for commentary and educational purposes. We recommend that listeners listen to the complete recordings, all of which are available on streaming services in the links provided. We also suggest that if you enjoy the music, you consider purchasing the CDs or high-quality downloads to support the artists. Mike, I found some disturbing things this week. There's a guy who has a YouTube channel, Wings of Pegasus.
Okay.
He's a rock guitarist in the UK. And he used to just highlight great solos and bands and things. But recently, he's been digging up dirt with AI and auto-tune. And he's made a number of videos showing artists that you wouldn't suspect using auto-tune and also using backing tracks and other tricks to enhance their performances. And it's quite surprising. And it makes me wonder if what we're listening to in a lot of music is real music or not.
Yeah, we sort of have to put a stop to that. I mean, AI music is going to start proliferating, and I think the day is going to come where somebody wants to hear something real produced by a human being, because we have this ability to be inspired. You know, the musicians can just kind of, when they're improvising or something like that, they're just kind of grabbing this sort of creativity from who knows where. It just sort of happens, and I don't think AI can really do that. It just sort of assembles what it's got to hand. And I think one day we're going to just want to hear something just played by human beings with their cultural background and from their own personal experience putting it out there.
Absolutely.
I mean, AI isn't going to come up with music by, say, Shostakovich on his own because it didn't live through World War II and the Soviet Union, you know?
Right. Well, how about some real music right now? I can guarantee that all of the music that's in this program is authentically generated by real humans.
Well, technically, we really can't because we didn't see the recording process. But I mean, it's a pretty good guess that it is.
I'll wager on it, yeah.
I'll wager on it, too. Now, if you've had a stressful week like I've had, one of the best things to do is to get to church because that'll calm you down. And that's what we're going to do with this first album from the Baroque era. It's called Venite, exultemus. Come, let us exult or be happy. Okay, I'm all for it. Motets by Campra and Bernier. This is by Concerto Soave. Nice name.
Yeah.
And they are Romain Bockler, a baritone. He's a singer. Simon Pierre and Gabriel Ferry, violin. Flor Soibe, I hope I said that right, bass viol. Ulrich Larsen on theorbo. Jean-Marc Aymes on harpsichord, positive organ, and great organ. And this is on the Ricecar label, released on October 31st. André Campra and Nicolas Bernier were French composers working in the Italian style of the early 18th century. The program follows a double thread presenting motets for male voice with and without a symphony, and in this case a symphony means an accompaniment by instruments doubling the upper parts. So in other words, it's not chamber music, which would be one instrument to a part. Right. And also, basso continuo is in there too. These works are alternated with organ pieces, as was common liturgical practice at that time. And I just love hearing a church organ. They just make me happy. Yeah, even if it's a smaller church with a Hammond organ, I still love those too.
Yeah.
Everything.
I guess this positive organ is kind of like a portable organ that they could use in smaller spaces or move around, right?
I think it's an earlier version of the what eventually came the Hammond B3 or something.
Without the electricity.
Right. Yeah, you had guys riding a bicycle to provide the air current through the... I think they had that at the bottom of churches during the Mass. You had to have like young men sort of riding these bicycles to generate energy for the organ. Crazy. If one of them kind of got off, then the organ solo would stop, I guess. Anyway, what is a motet? That's a composition written for liturgical use, so a motet is always religious. And it ranges in size from solo voice and basso continuo to choir, and is with or without instruments. So basically it's for liturgical use. The motets published by Campra and Bernier are for smaller ensembles. On this recording, the first and last pieces we hear are settings by each composer of Psalm 94, after which this album is titled, Venite exultemus. So, we're going to hear the same text set in very different ways. Okay, not an unusual thing to do in this era. So tracks 1 through 5, André Campra, Venite exultemus, 7th motet for solo voice and symphony. And the solo voice is, of course, Romain Bockler. Track 1 is the first section, Venite exultemus domino. Strings at a sprightly harpsichord rhythm begin the piece. And why not? We're exulting, are we not? It's nice to hear a solo voice motet, because usually we hear these sung by choirs, and Romain Bockler has an appealing, light baritone that suits the mood perfectly. So let's hear a bit of this. Okay, and there you go. You're going to hear that voice throughout the album, in fact. What he's singing is, "Come, let us rejoice in the Lord and cry with joy to God." And that's exactly what it sounds like he's doing. The recording has admirable clarity and a sense of intimacy to it, as though we're in a small chamber enjoying a private concert. Track 2 is the section Quoniam Deus Magnus Dominus. This is more of a recitative. I like Bockler's French accent on the Latin words. The us in Dominus, he kind of has this French way of singing that rather appealed to me. I'm so used to hearing these texts sung by British singers that the French inflection is refreshing to my ear. By the 40-second mark, there's a bit of a rhythm to the accompaniment. This track is clearly setting up the aria that follows, and there's a satisfying low note at the end. Track 3, Venite Adoremus. The organ takes over continuo duties from the harpsichord here. It's a nice little transition. And in the previous track too. Bockler enters after a long introduction on the strings and organ, and I'm going to sample this from when he comes in. Okay, did you hear that mus at the end? That's really French sounding. Again, instead of moose. Mus. I love it. Bockler's clear pronunciation of the Latin text as he sings makes the section easy to follow as well. He's very understated, which is also in keeping with the liturgical nature of the piece. Please, a lot of critics will complain about certain works, religious works, being sung as though they're operas. They're supposed to be sung with a little bit of solemnity, let's say, and we're getting that here from Bockler. Towards the end, he goes into a piano dynamic, meaning soft in this case, and achieves an intimate feel like we're spying on him at his prayers. So we're kind of, I rather like that, a little intimate moment. Track 4, Hodie, today, Si vocem eius audieritis, or something like that. This is a sprightly movement, and the harpsichord is back to give the rhythm its spring. Okay, a cheerful, chirpy section, and then we go to track 5, Quadraginta annis offensus fui generationi illi. The organ once again features as continuo as the ensemble plays a light textured theme. I'm wondering what's happening here. After 4 movements of exhortations to rejoicing God, here it seems that God is speaking himself, saying, "Their hearts have always strayed, they will never know my peace." What a spiritual bummer that is. But the music is nevertheless pleasing. I'm kind of wondering what this movement is all about as far as the text goes. The music is cheerful enough, though. Track 6, Pierre Dommage, Plein Jeu. And this is for the organ. The organ maintains the same tempo and tone as the previous piece. This is a full church organ sound. Let's hear a bit of it. These are all very short, so I'm just going to play a little at the beginning. All right, great sounding organ there. Tracks 7 through 11, again, André Campra, Laudate Dominum. This is a motet for solo voice and 2 violins. Track 7, Laudate Dominum in excelsis, in the highest. Let us praise God in the highest, or glory to God in the highest, I guess. Another exhortation to praise here. The strings give this a dancing rhythm, and the vocal has a lift to it as well. Let's hear this. A pleasant lilting rhythm to begin that piece. We go to track 8, Quia ipse dixit, and then there's an ampersand, and facto sunt. So these are 2 separate sections in one track. A theorbo plays continuo for this recitative introduction to the next aria, and I have to say the variety of continuo instruments coming in unpredictably adds to the interest of these movements. We're hearing the same voice, the baritone, in each track, but where the variety is coming is in the background and in the instrumentation. So let's hear the theorbo here. There's some great low notes coming there. I probably should have stuck with that a little longer. Oh well, you'll just have to sample it to hear it. Track 9, Laudate Dominum de Terra. This section dances too, mostly in the strings. This aria is brief, and Bockler keeps up the rhythmic bounce with his light, appealing tone. Track 10, Montes and Omnes Coles. This is a slower movement featuring organ and strings. Winds are in after the first statement of the theme, so there's another new sound here. I like the high note Bockler fades in on, so I'll sample that. Let's go into about 45 seconds into the track to hear this. At 1 minute and 51 seconds, the piece ends, and a recitative introduction to the next movement begins. Track 11, Confessio eius super cellum and terram. A dancing violin line starts the piece, continuo joins in, and the voice is in soon after, also in high spirits. And we end on a cheerful note. Track 12, Louis Marchand, Fond d'Orgue. It's a slow and stately rhythm from the organ in this under 2-minute work. You can hear the air being released from the pipes, and I really love that sound. It tells me that's an older organ. It's an effect I really like. I really love hearing those old European organs, the smaller ones, in those side churches that you kind of go into. We don't get to hear these in America too much, only on recordings. Track 13, Nicolas Bernier. So we have a new composer here. We're hearing his music for the first time. Judica me Deus. This is a motet for a solo voice with symphony, meaning like doubled instruments, to be played like all times and for the sacred sacrament. Okay, so all weeks. It's not like for a special occasion, is what tout le temps means here. Right. Okay, track 13, Judica me Deus et discerne causam meam. Organ continuo starts here with heartfelt lines from vibrato-less strings. The instrumental introduction goes on at length. The vocal finally comes in at 1 minute and 32 seconds, pretty late into the piece, but let's jump ahead and hear that vocal. Bockler uses most of his range in this piece. Again, he remains understated, serving the music and its intended use in the liturgy. The movement unwinds at a leisurely pace, repeating many lines. Track 14, Emite lucem tuam. Rhythmic energy is gained here as the cello continuo and strings pick up in 3/4 motion. Bockler is in after the 30-second introduction. Here, he accentuates the rhythm, too, and there's some appealing melisma in his line. In fact, Bernier really likes to use melisma, which is different notes on the same vowel sound. The melismatic vocal setting makes this one of the album's more appealing movements. Let's hear a little bit of that. Track 15, Confitebor tibi in Cythera. This movement also has a lively rhythm, with the strings vigorous in their outlining of the rhythm. Bockler has tighter melismatic material here. Track 16, Quare tristis es anima mea. A more somber movement, with Bockler singing a somber-sounding one note per syllable as he asks, "Why are you sad, my soul? Why so disturbed within me?" And finally, track 17, Spera in Deo. The rhythm picks up in the strings again as the vocalist sings, "Hope in God, for I will yet praise him, my Savior and my God." Let's hear a bit of this. We get another organ interlude next by Nicolas Lebègue, Prelude du 5e ton. This is from his Premier Livre de Pièces d'Orgue, written in 1676. These organ interludes are all brief, and I like the way this one is full-voiced, showing off the organ's full tone. let's get out of that before it ends. Track 19, back to Nicolas Bernier. Alma Redemptoris Mater. This is a motet for the Holy Virgin. The first chord follows hot on the heels of the previous organ work and features organ continuo. Bockler is in right away with the vocal. A little bit of melisma in there, and a really cheerful rhythm as well. And in fact, this composer, Nicolas Bernier, seems to like melisma a lot. The piece begins with it, and moves between a melismatic, slower pace and a dancing, cheerful rhythm. Again, Bockler's clarity of tone and enunciation carry the piece, especially in the faster, dancing, melismatic sections. Track 20, Nicolas Lebègue again, Prélude du sixième tone. The action on the organ is audible in the quick flourishes heard in this piece. I like hearing the mechanism releasing air from the pipes, and we get a bit of that here. Now, when I say the action, I really just mean the mechanical action that's opening the pipes, not the keys themselves. Let's hear a little bit of that, because it's a sound I really like. It just kind of makes me feel like I'm in a small room with the organ. Nice little key change there at the end. Tracks 21 through 26, we're back to the opening text, Venite exultemus, this time in a composition by Nicolas Bernier. It's a motet for all times, for solo voice with symphony, so many instruments per part. Track 21, Venite exultemus, starts in a cheerful mood. Bockler is in after a brief instrumental, and Bernier, as I mentioned before, seems to favor melisma, and we get some of that here. But for the most part, the syllables follow the rhythm. Let's hear this a little bit. Track 22, Quoniam Deus Magnus Dominus Magnus. I rather like the dotted rhythm rising pattern in the continuo here, which is played by strings and harpsichord. Bernier sets this as a brief aria, and we move on to track 23, Quoniam Ipsius Est Mare. The rhythm and instrumental figuration are fairly busy here. No recitatives here. The setting features melisma and the voice marking the rhythm along with the violins. Track 24, Venite Adoremus. A quick change as the previous piece leads into this one. The tempo is slower, but still on the lively side. The violin lines have a genial quality to them, appropriate for the word venite. They sound inviting. After the second minute, the melody starts winding down into the lower end of Bockler's range. Track 25, Hodie, si vocem eius audieritis. This section comes across as a recitative, the only one in the setting, with Bockler practically proclaiming the text. Track 26, that odd text again, Quadraginta annis proximus fui generationi huic. This is where God says they will never enter my rest, and once again it's given a cheerful setting. I don't know what God's so happy about here. I'm really wondering what this is all about, but there it is. Let's hear a little bit of it. Bernier once again gives the singer plenty of melisma in the vocal line, and Bockler sings it with precision and pleasurable tone. His approach is understated but nevertheless appealing. And that's the end of the album. This is a well-planned program of solo voice motets by two French composers of the Baroque era. The motets are all separated from each other by a brief solo organ work, with Jean-Marc Aymes effectively showing off the various moods of his instruments in these well-chosen works. The effectiveness of the program really falls to the singer, and here baritone Romain Bockler puts the works across with understated yet clear and appealing tone, vibratoless throughout, as is the current thinking of the Baroque style. He enunciates with great clarity and sings smoothly. That said, he's not the most charismatic of singers, and while he puts these works across well, I could have used some variety of approach or tonal color throughout the album. He does seem to rely on that appealing tone of his in each work, which is fair enough. The variety on this album comes in the continuo combinations. It's sometimes taken by organ, sometimes by harpsichord, and there was a theorbo in there on one or two tracks. It keeps the ear engaged. The works themselves are cheerful for the most part and should put a lift in the listener's step. It's an effective program and an enjoyable album.
I enjoyed Romain Bockler's rich baritone voice. It's the center of everything here. And he can also get way up high with a fine tone when it's called for, too. Quite a range. With the music, the instrumentation and the moods of the works have a lot of variety, so that keeps you engaged throughout the program. And also the solo organ works that break up the program, as in a religious service, add a lot. And those organs have interesting tonal characteristics, as you pointed out. So those are fun to listen to. The main centerpieces here are the two different interpretations of Psalm 94, set to music in contrasting ways in these motets by Campra and Bernier. The booklet notes are really helpful.
Yeah, I thought so too.
With detailed historical information and comparison of the differing approaches of the composers, which I found quite interesting. However, it'll take a few more listens to register all of those details. I'd have to check them movement by movement to see how the instrumentation is different and how it's related to the moods of what the texts are saying too. Nevertheless, on a first listen, it's an enjoyable and inspiring program.
Next, we have Bohuslav Martinu, Violin Concertos 1 and 2, and also Stravinsky Divertimento from his ballet The Fairy's Kiss. Played by Josef Spacek on violin, Miroslav Sekera is on the piano for the Stravinsky work, and the Prague Radio Symphony Orchestra conducted by Petr Popelka on the violin concertos. This is released on the Supraphon label, the same label that released Martinu's string quartets played by the Pavel Haas Quartet, which we heard a few weeks ago, and we were pretty wowed by that recording. In fact, we're pretty impressed by all of Martinu's music, and we really should listen to him more. I've got a few recordings of his on my shelf here. I got the complete symphonies, and I've also got another version of these violin concertos by Franz Peter Zimmermann, which I really should listen to again after hearing this, because I thought this was really great. All right, let's listen. Tracks 1 through 3, Bohuslav Martinu, Violin Concerto No. 1, H226, composed in 1933. Now, if you don't know these works, you're really in for a treat, I think.
Yeah.
The first violin concerto was written for Samuel Dushkin, an American violinist who Igor Stravinsky wrote his violin concerto for. Dushkin wound up requesting many changes in Martinu's violin concerto. The situation in Germany in the 1930s then changed, and the premiere never took place. In fact, Martinu never heard this work performed.
Wow.
The premiere finally occurred in 1973 with Josef Suk playing the solo part with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Georg Scholti. Man, that must have been something, huh? Those old conductors that we grew up with, Karajan, Scholti, all those guys. All right, track 1, Allegro Moderato. The piece begins with an appealing fanfare. The orchestration is lean and ear-catching, and I'm engaged right away. And the violin hasn't even come in yet. The violin's entrance comes at the 39-second mark and echoes the opening of the work, and I'll give you the violin's entry. It's immediately appealing, a little adventurous, rhythmically exciting, and it sounds different from other violin concertos, so I was hooked on this right away. There are quite a few double stops up high in the opening, as you heard, and I rather like Josef Spacek's rugged tone in the more aggressive passages. The orchestral sound favors the high end, but is exceptionally clear, so that the orchestration registers full to the ear, if not the body. Nevertheless, there is bass there, so it sounds really good. The violin line is intriguing throughout, and that's partially Spacek's doing. Martinu had a good ear for orchestration, and while lean-sounding, the orchestration is always attention-getting. The violin gets a lot of high notes in the solo part. There's a rusticness to the occasional double stops in the line at around the 4-minute mark, and I loved the solo violin's lyrical moment at 5 minutes and 30 seconds, and we have to hear that too. This is still the first movement. Spacek sings this line like a soaring bird. It just sounds fantastic and really feels freeing. I found the violin writing for this movement with Spacek's playing to be highly appealing, and I'm already loving this work. There's some pretty spectacular double stopping at the end of the movement, leading right up to the final chord. Track 2 is the second movement, Andante. The movement begins with a warm string chord, which could sound warmer on the recording, followed by a woodwind passage, again with attention-getting harmony and orchestration. At the 1-minute mark, the violin steps out with the lyrical theme. It's sweet-sounding and highly appealing, and the orchestration dresses it up well. The The movement is a respectable 4 minutes long and just flies by due to the gorgeous melody and orchestration. Track 3, the third and final movement, Allegretto. The opening is playful, and again, the orchestration is striking. By the third minute, the music is more severe, but again, the tones produced by the solo violin are striking and really engage the listener. You know, there's a real quirkiness to that rhythmic line there that really drew me in. The music has a forward propulsion that anticipates rock music to my ear. The violin comes out of this perpetual motion line at around 5 minutes and 30 seconds, and it's a great ending to the line. His tone takes on a more rustic sound with the double stops around the 6-minute mark. The piece is given a big ending, and this is a great performance by Spacek of this work. Tracks 4 through 7, a more familiar work, Igor Stravinsky's Divertimento for violin and piano. This was arranged in 1932 and features Miroslav Sekera on piano. The music was arranged for violin and piano from Stravinsky's ballet The Fairy's Kiss, based on motifs from Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale The Ice Maiden. The composition consists of a reworking of some of Tchaikovsky's early piano pieces and songs, and I guess that would send us to the new Trifonov album, which I guess
Right.
I'm going to have to hear now. Well, I'd have to hear it anyway, because we really like him. Track 4, Sinfonia. Stravinsky's orchestration is always colorful and just a bit odd, and we hear that here in the opening harmony between violin and piano. Let me sample the main melody heard at 1 minute and 38 seconds, though. This will be a little further in, but no worries, the harmony is still quirky in the Stravinskyan style. The violin then gets some speedy, virtuosic lines. Stravinsky includes a lot of quick changes of melody and harmonic texture in this movement. Pacing and clarity of texture are admirable in this performance. By now, Josef Spacek's violin playing has impressed me enough that I want to seek out other recordings of his. He's completely idiomatic in this music as he was in the Martinu. After its many changes of approach, there's a tension build up to the end of the movement, which simply leads without resolution into the calmer second movement. Track 5 is the second movement, Dans Suisse, or Swiss dances. At the beginning, the rhythm chugs along, interrupted by occasional, more lyrical and equally fragmentary passages. Yes, Stravinsky composed in fragments. It's like the two musical events are happening at the same time, and we're switching our attention between them. The theme is then broken down into cubist parts as the movement goes on. We hear it in different guises. I like Stravinsky's liberal use of harmonics on the violin. Spacek executes all of this perfectly and with great character. Track 6, the third movement, Scherzo, Au Moulin, or At the Mill. The piano has arching lines at the beginning. There are quick changes of rhythm, and let's hear a bit of this. Already, elements of the next movement are present here. At 1 minute and 20 seconds, there's a musette theme that's briefly heard, then another quick change. Musette would be a droning sort of tone. Both musicians are alert to each change and characterize brilliantly throughout. Secker's light touch on the piano is especially appealing in this movement. Track 7, the final movement, Pas de deux, adagio and variations, and then there's a coda at the end. The movement begins slowly with unrelated themes in both instruments. This unrelatedness of themes seems to be a defining element of the movement, as the violin and piano go off in their own direction, occasionally coming together, but always in contrast, for example, piano staccato, violin legato. At 3 minutes and 12 seconds, there's a change to a completely new theme and rhythmic idea. The duo performing here even takes sudden speeding up in tempo as a well-rehearsed unit. At the 4 minute and 15 second mark, there's another seeming change of movement to a more aggressive but still playful and appealing section. This interpretation lands more on the playful and musical and less on the aggressive side, which I've heard in certain performances. I thought this performance was highly enjoyable. The mood set by Spacek and Secker is fantastic. Alright, we've been waiting for this. Tracks 8 through 10, Bohuslav Martinu, Violin Concerto number 2, H293. This one was composed in 1943, 10 years after the first one, and you want to recognize that year, during the war. By the time this second violin concerto was composed, Martinu had fled to the USA in 1941. The dedicatee, Misha Elman, gave the premiere on New Year's Eve, 1943, in Boston with the Boston Symphony Orchestra conducted by Serge Koussevitzky. The work ties in with the romanticism of the Dvorak tradition. So if you like Dvorak, you're going to want to hear this. It's pretty big bones work. Track 8, Andante to poco allegro to moderato, the first movement. It starts with a surge, a loud chord propelled by timpani. It's ominous sounding, and then the music quiets down for what sounds like a stuck modal melody, which repeats several times. The violin is in at the 52-second mark, all double stops, and sounding downcast, yet reaching up. It's a mini cadenza that he's got there, and again, it's impressively compelling writing by Martinu and playing by Spacek. The violin theme has an appealing lyricism to it once it breaks out of its opening stratospheric reaches. Let's hear a little of that lyricism. At 3 minutes and 45 seconds, winds introduce a new theme in a rather unusual sounding fashion for this instrument group. They sort of have angular string lines, but they've got that wind tone. Again, Martinu is exceptionally good at catching the ear. The orchestration of this movement is big-boned, perhaps having to do with his observations of his newly adopted country, the USA. I also like the quieter section at around the 6-minute mark, where the violin is accompanied by winds only, making for some interesting contrasts. After this point, textures change rapidly. At 8 minutes and 48 seconds, the orchestra builds up tension and dynamic, which invites the violin to reintroduce his more lyrical theme from the beginning. Then, with big-boned chords like those we heard at the very beginning, the orchestra makes strong statements that end with the violin playing a cadenza that starts on the gentle side and then builds up to some double-stopping virtuosity. The end of the movement is inconclusive, and we move to the second movement, Andante Moderato, track 9. Winds begin this movement. They play a big role in this piece, incidentally. And they start with a modal theme. The appealing wind and violin combination we heard briefly in the opening movement is on full display here as the violin enters. I enjoyed the violin's lyrical melody, well shaped by Spacek. In fact, he's doing some fantastic playing on this album.
Yeah.
I love his lyricism. And he really has the measure of this music and makes it register at every moment. The entire movement comes across with delightful lyrical passages and had me in a good place. It ends with rising passages in winds and violin, well worth hearing all the way through. Track 10, the third movement, Poco Allegro. Percussion figures here too, as brass chords present a similar ominous atmosphere to the first movement. The violin has tricky double-stopped passages and rhythms right away. There's a tricky rhythm change at around the 1 minute and 40-second mark, and its unstable character fades and a more pastoral passage is in at around the 2-minute mark. The violin takes off on a rhythmically vibrant, quickly bowed passage after the 3-minute mark, inviting some grand harmonic chords from the orchestra. The violin cadenza is in at around the 5 minute and 40-second mark, and again, it's got plenty of knotty double-stopped chords, and sounds like it's trying to untie that knot, winding down finally to a rising trill passage that reintroduces the orchestra. The rhythm is now skittish and includes some fine orchestration, inviting flutes to mingle with the violin solo line. And this is how the work comes to its end, and that's the end of the album. The two Martinu violin concertos are really a pleasure for the ears. Their melodies and orchestration draw the listener in. Both are appealing works all the way through, and much more immediately pleasing than the intriguing but sometimes acerbic string quartets that we heard about a month ago, as played by the Pavel Haas Quartet on Supraphon, although I loved those too, albeit for different reasons. Josef Spacek's playing makes these pieces come completely alive. So inside Martinu's idiom is he. He makes every element in the score register, and is sensitively accompanied by the Prague Radio Symphony Orchestra. Petr Popelka sets ideal tempi, and as a result of that and Spacek's sensitive playing, the music registers fully. Martinu's music has gained some popularity, but should be performed more often than it is. And this really is an album that everybody should hear. The Stravinsky chamber work at the center of the program is played for its vibrant rhythms and especially for its harmony. Both players carefully balance their tones so that Stravinsky's very unusual ear for timbre and harmony come through. You really can't go wrong with this album, and if you're looking for an entry point to Martinu's music, absolutely start here.
The performances here are all very energetic. The Violin Concerto No. 1 might be my favorite Martinu composition that we've heard so far.
Could be, yeah.
Compared to the other works we've heard, this is less moody and overall completely positively charged with lots of excitement. The interplay between the violin and all the orchestra sections is really exciting. There's a lot of light and dancing lines in the violin parts. It's kind of short, though, and it makes you want to listen to it again right away. Rather short movements here. No. 2 has a lot more contrasts. The cadenzas were really great in this work. In both works, fabulous playing by Josef Spacek. And the Stravinsky is suitably light for a divertimento, but the interplay between Spacek and Sekera is engaging. There's a lot of contrast, including intense and tender sections. I thought the performances here were really outstanding. And every time we hear a new Martinu work, we get another sort of facet of his personality and what was going on in his life and the world at that time. And they've all been really interesting.
Yeah, and again, thanks to Lucas for sending me the booklet for this album. We'll definitely be talking about the remaining 3 string quartets once the Pavel Haas quartet releases those. I assume they're going to.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing those too.
Yeah. All right. And last, perhaps the most unusual classical music album of the year.
That's for sure.
Found Objects, Sound Objects, and the pianist here is Marc-André Hamelin, a favorite of ours. He records for the Hyperion label here, and this was released on October 31st, Halloween, and a rather clever release date since Hamelin contributes a piece called Hexen Sabbat at the end, or Witches' Sabbath. We'll get to that at the end of the program. It was amusing to read about Hamelin's struggles to come up with a title for this album in his booklet note. We have a similar struggle every week when we name the podcast. And in fact, we should probably record that and just put it up as a bonus thing just so people can see how kind of crazy that is. Sometimes we get it right away, though. And
yeah, you never know.
Yeah, you never know. The title he wound up with sums up the album well, and this may be the most eclectic collection of works ever put together on a single album in really any kind of music, really. Track 1 is a composition by Frank Zappa, the rock guitarist, but he was also a composer of, art music, shall we call it, and he was a big fan of the more sort of atonal music or even 12-tone music of Schoenberg and Boulez especially. This piece is released by Ali N. Askin. It's called Ruth is Sleeping, and it was composed 1982 to 1983. It's the first piece that Zappa wrote for the synclavier. This was the sampling keyboard that was wildly popular in the 1980s and was on most albums from that decade. I remember it being on Kate Bush's album Hounds of Love especially, because I think she wrote that whole album on the synclavier. The title refers to the fact that Ruth Underwood, Zappa's extraordinary mallet player in the 1970s, used to curl up for naps underneath her marimba in those moments during rehearsals when she wasn't needed. So I guess Zappa, it's kind of a typical Zappa inspiration, really. He just kind of looks at what's around him and writes something about that. The beginning has an atonal, maybe 12-tone approach to it. It's got a lot of rippling figures in the right hand and counterpoint between the left and right hands. It's pretty complicated. Those who know Zappa's rock records may be surprised at the sound of this. You want to notice not only are the two hands sort of going against each other, but there are like little rhythmic changes in one and then the other, and it sounds really complicated. Zappa really liked composing really difficult music, and it's said that he composed the most difficult work ever, whose name I now can't remember, but this sounds kind of hard to play, and we have a great pianist playing it, so of course Marc-André Hamelin is up to the task. There's a particularly nice downward sequenced rippling pattern at around the 1 minute and 26 second mark. Now, I should mention, Askin had arranged this for 2 pianos, and really only a pianist like Hamelin could play this solo. Hamelin has a beautiful fluidity with extremely complex lines. I can't see many other solo pianists making this piece work, so whether you like it or not, you're hearing an amazing and even sensitive performance. Track 2, a work by Salvatore Martirano. Martirano was born in Yonkers, New York, and in 1927, and he died in 1995. This piece is called Stuck on Stella, and it was composed in 1979. Martirano is an unclassifiable composer. He also developed a remarkable multi-dimensional and massive electronic instrument called the Salmar Construction, on which he frequently gave improvised solo concerts. The name Stella comes from the jazz standard Stella by Starlight, but the piece is really a sort of free fantasy. It starts with a flourish that sounds atonal, then a static rippling effect follows. There's a lot of atmosphere building at the beginning. New ideas appear suddenly and sound spontaneous in Hamelin's playing, one of his admirable abilities as a classical pianist. At 1 minute and 51 seconds, a playful upward staccato line repeats a few times, instantly changing the complex mood of the piece. There's a well-taken, by both pianist and composer, transition to a slower, quieter section at around the 2 minute and 30 second mark. The piece moves from new idea to new idea, so a sample won't do it justice, but I'll isolate that transition that I just talked about, which occurs around 10 seconds into this sample. Listen carefully. The work stays in this mood for a while, but then gradually grows more complex up into and after the 6 minute mark, where it's played at a more forte volume and features chords. The work really starts rolling after the 9 minute mark. I might as well give a sample of that too. Yeah, the work does sound pretty improvised because the ideas just kind of come and seem to come out of nowhere. Now, if you're wondering how he got from the first sample to the second one, you're really going to have to hear the whole work. It's got a lot of incident in it, let's say. Hamelin's quick-changing moods and shadings of touch are remarkable here, and he makes a work like this come alive with some drama to it, too. Track 3, John Oswald. He's Canadian, and he's a contemporary composer, born in 1953. This is his work, Tip, from 2021. In 1993, Oswald wrote a piece called Plexure, a medley in which hundreds upon hundreds of strands of existing pop and rock music are collaged and superimposed. The idea is reprised in Tip, the piece recorded here, but to a lesser degree. And I have to say, hearing this piece really made me want to hear Plexure. I really hope someone's going to record that. 40 bits of classical, jazz, and pop canons are quoted. And if you're a music junkie like us, you're going to really love this because you're just going to want to quote everything. This could be like a Trivial Pursuit game listening to this piece. Hamelin states that the title manages to convey both the partial nature of the various quotes, as in tip of the iceberg, and the process of recognition or quasi-recognition by the listener, as in tip of the tongue. The very first quote seems to be Beethoven's famous Moonlight Sonata. Inevitably, you won't catch all of the quotes. Some of them are very short. In fact, they flash by so quickly that I find I can recognize them but not name them. See how many you can find in this sample. There are more than 3. This is from the beginning of the piece. We'll hear the whole first minute. Wow. I mean, even PDQ Bach didn't get that many quotes into his works.
I was taking notes when I was listening to it. So the one we just heard there, I don't know if it's Nature Boy by Hayden Abez or the second movement in Dvorak's Piano Quintet No. 2, because those two sound a lot alike.
Yeah, and I think Nature Boy may have been written after that. We don't really know.
Also, later on, there's some Satie, I got Beethoven, Vince Guaraldi, Linus and Lucy,
Guaraldi too. Yeah.
Some Scott Joplin, and Dave Brubeck. I'm pretty sure I got a lot of the jazz ones. I may have missed some of the classical ones in there.
Yeah.
When we were talking about this during the week, for those of us who grew up with old radios in cars with knobs, this was like sort of going through all the stations really quickly.
Right.
And not pausing to notice what you were hearing there. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it kind of sounded a bit like that. I got to say, if you have people at work who like music, this would be a really good conversation starter around the water cooler.
Yeah.
Now, around the 6-minute mark, a popular early jazz section starts with quotes from Rhapsody in Blue. And we've got to hear a bit of that, too, because this is just really something. It's very different than what we just heard. So let's hear this part, too. And again, I recognize a lot of these, but I just don't remember what they are. So.
Tip of the tongue, indeed.
Tip of the tongue. There you go. I don't know how many pianists could put a work like this across. It seems tailor-made for Hamelin's talents. If you know the music of PDQ Bach I mentioned earlier, this is a more complex version of that, and the quotes aren't played for humor here. They did raise a smile, I have to say. Deep listeners will recognize a quote from Beethoven's last piano sonata, Opus 111 in C minor, at around the 8-minute mark. I have to admit I was pretty intrigued by this. It's not a work everybody knows, and it's long, and to just pull out a quote like that is pretty amazing. Yeah. Anyway, listen to that and entertain yourself. Tracks 4 through 9, John Cage, The Perilous Night for prepared piano, remastered, and this is from 1944. This is Cage's first important work for the prepared piano. It was written in a time of great personal turmoil, and it expresses the despair he felt before separating from his wife, Xenia. Its 6 sections constitute as many different reflections of his anguished state of mind at the time, and the music ultimately trails off without any hope of resolution. This work is the centerpiece of the album, and having a prepared piano piece in the middle really gives this a B-section sort of feel to the entire program. You can think of the entire program as a meta ABA form, with the A sections conforming to the piano's natural sound. Anyway, track 4 is, Cage always gave his movements intriguing titles like crotchet equals 176. A crotchet is a quarter note. It's the British word for that. Hamelin gets some powerful thuds out of the prepared piano here. In fact, this might be the best recorded prepared piano I've ever heard. Let's hear the opening of this piece. Yeah, the engineer seems to have stuck the microphone right in the piano, and it is a pretty quiet piece, so you can do that here. The sound is vivid and closely recorded, so all the detail registers. And then we can move to track 5. The second movement, minim, equals 92. A minim is an eighth note. The briefer movement with some intriguing, almost Balinese sounds coming out of the prepared piano. I like Hamelin's graded attack as well. This comes across with exquisite touch. It's also very short, so I'll have you listen to that on your own. Track 6, the third movement, minim, equals 80. A more spacious movement with pauses built into it. It moves with an introspective quality to it, with some of the sounds having a plucked quality. Track 7, the fourth movement, minim, equals 80 again. A steady rhythmic pattern in the right hand as the left hand plays light gong-like sounds. And that's half of the movement right there. Track 8, minim equals 92. This 30-second movement is given quick, fleeting patterns. At 20 seconds, one last rhythm explodes out. Track 9, the sixth movement, crotchet equals 176 or faster. The rhythm here has a bit of a groove to it. There's some rattling and a seeming knocking sound produced by the prepared piano. Again, the sound registers exceptionally well. This is an excellent performance and recording of this work. The rhythm becomes more insistent at about the 1-minute mark. At the 2-minute mark, the tempo slows and the dynamic quietens so that the knocking sounds make up most of the sound. The place does a natural fade on the knocking sounds, ending the piece without a resolution. The perilous night, it would seem, goes on. Track 10, Step on Wolp, 1902 to 1972. Passacaglia, number 4 of 4 studies on basic rose, composed in 1936, revised in 1971. That's a long time after the initial composition to be revising a work. I feel like, if you're going to do that so many years later, you're a different person then. It's kind of, I feel like you got to keep that youthful energy in the work if even if you don't like it later in life. Anyway, we're hearing the revised version here. It's a complex work built from a very simple string of expanding intervals, as well as 11 other series derived from it. The piece starts with a dotted rhythm line creeping upward, There's also a steady quarter note line providing counterpoint. The work has appealing gestures in it. It remains musical despite its seeming randomness of ideas. There are some virtuosic repeated notes at the 2-minute mark, but they're gone after 10 seconds, and an earlier pattern with a new figuration follows. Let's sample this thicker texture at around the 3-minute and 30-second mark. This, as you heard, is headed off by a quieter, sparser section. One thing I noticed at the beginning that continues throughout the piece is the contrasting rhythmic patterns between the hands. You can hear it in the slow section after the 4-minute mark. The music remains calm for a few minutes, and after the 6-minute mark starts climbing as it did at the beginning, only now it has more complex figuration. Again, Hamelin knows exactly what to do to put this piece across and has the technique and the presence to free him to do so. The piece builds in volume and rhythm into the 10th minute with some big fortissimi whose tone sounds fully controlled by Hamelin. There's nothing reckless here. Once this reaches a peak past the 12-minute mark, the music suddenly quietens and scurrying lines are heard that themselves dissolve in volume and quickness. There's now a lot of space, and at the end, Wolpe has the work creep to an ending, recalling the work's opening. Track 11, Yehudi Weiner, who is still with us. He's approaching his 100th year. He was born in 1929, and I guess that makes him 96 years old this year. The piece is called Refrain, and it was composed in 2012. Weiner's music has a deep purpose and vibrant life to it, according to Hamelin. The harmonic language is uniquely his own, and its coloristic shifts create an uncanny sense of inevitability. The work acts like an oasis in the midst of the flurry of activity on this album. It starts slowly, with carefully placed half notes. The patterns slowly get filled in. We really hear that opening gesture, slowing down and speeding up throughout the piece, with varieties of approaches. Finally, at 5 minutes and 8 seconds, the music starts taking off, with rapid repeated note patterns and forte dynamics. Let's hear a little bit of that. This all calms down again with the crystalline, quieter tones heard after the 7-minute mark. The music stays in more introspective mode, and some familiar gestures re-emerge as the piece moves through its remaining 7 minutes to its tranquil ending. And track 12, as promised at the beginning, this is Marc-André Hamelin's work, Hexensabbat, from 2023. Some of this work, and especially the opening, is a rethinking of a sketch from Hamelin's student days. He says he had in mind the Ronde du Sabbat from the end of Berlioz's Symphonie Fantastique. Hamelin is no stranger to the bold statement, and this work starts with stark, crisply played harmonies high up on the keyboard. It's all staccato at the opening. Hamelin's works are always highly virtuosic, and this is no different in that regard. Already in the 12th minute, we're hearing powerful dynamics with intricate inner lines, great overall sound on the piano. The loud end is captured fully, yet without attacking the listener's ears. By 3 minutes and 30 seconds, the music reaches a pianissimo as enchanted spells chime out of the high end. The harmony at 5 minutes and 30 seconds actually has a Debussy sound to it. Energy builds up after the 6-minute mark, and we're back to powerful fortissimos. Let's hear a bit of this. Man, that sounds like the wild chiming of bells. But then if you're listening in, you're hearing that like continuing bass line. Boy, Hamelin is really an incredible pianist. By the way, I should mention the pronunciation of his name. In America, he's referred to as Marc-André Hamelin, and he calls himself that as well. But in Japan, he's given the French pronunciation of his name, Hamelin, and I've just gotten so used to that that's what I call him. So if you're a little confused by that, that's why I'm saying it that way. Anyway, the ending really pulls out all of the virtuosic stops with its piano fortissimo crescendo and clearly articulated rumbling approach to its final pounded-out chords. Again, as I said at the beginning, this is easily the most unique piano album of the year, and maybe even of the 21st century. When you hear an album like this, you have to be grateful that we have a pianist like Marc-André Hamelin, who first of all is able to program it due to his deep knowledge of music, but also has the ability and understanding to put it all across in performance. He really is special among pianists, not just possessing an amazing technique, but a curio hunter's mind for music. That's sort of what this program is, a program of unrelated, odd musical curios. All of the music lands on the odd side, and there's a bit of a challenge to the listener there too, with all of the density of material packed into each piece. Also, I think I've never heard a better sounding performance of The Perilous Chapel by John Cage. Absolute respect to recording engineer Oscar Torres and recording producer Andrew Keener for capturing Hamelin's powerful dynamics so precisely. The album and the playing on it really defines what music for adults is. It takes a mature musical mind to absorb this, and it won't be for everyone. And that's a bit of a shame, because the musical rewards are great. The compositions all show a high degree of sophistication, and some are humorous into the bargain. Hamelin really is one of a kind, and you want to hear this in order to experience what it's possible for a human being to do at a piano.
This one squarely goes into the not for date night category, I could say.
I was thinking about that.
On a performance level and just music that's interesting to listen to and try to figure out, this rate's really high. It's a challenge to listen to. My favorite piece was the Tip by Oswald.
Yeah, I kind of figured. Me too. I like
just for the challenge of it and the interesting way that someone could stitch all of that together. It sort of has to give you a fractured personality trying to perform that too. I wonder if there's a list somewhere with every snippet included. I'd like to read that and have another few listens at it. I think, as you mentioned, the Cage performance is the best version I've ever heard, both in terms of putting across the rhythmic character in Hamelin's performance and also in the preparation of the piano. Those sounds were really interesting, and a lot of times you thought you were listening to some sort of obscure percussion ensemble or something like that. That was really ear-catching and intriguing. The sounds were all perfect. The rest of the material here gives you a lot to chew on.
No, it sure does.
Every piece is unique in its own way, physically challenging, musically challenging. Somehow, Hamelin makes it all very musical.
He's amazing that way, yeah.
Which is no easy task. Yeah, it's really amazing. And his own original piece at the end, the conclusion to that really caps off an exciting album. So, especially if you're a pianist, you're going to want to hear this whole recording. Right. You'll be in awe at the technique and the musicality, even on these really difficult pieces with lines that are hard to figure out. I don't know what else to say. It's really interesting and unique. It's challenging. I'll have to listen to it a few more times when I'm in the frame of mind to sort of start to unpack all of the ideas in here. Yeah,
same here. And I will be listening to this again and again, but not, obviously every day. You got to give your mind a little bit of a rest too.
Yeah. It's always good to have a challenge come along once in a while. Yeah,
this is a really fun one too.
Okay, over on the jazz side, we've got a lot of variety as usual. We'll go over to Europe for our first recording on the Swedish TengTones label, a recording called Straytrane, and this is going to feature a quartet. There's not much information online about the recording, no Bandcamp listing for it yet, and TengTones doesn't have it on their website either. But I want to give thanks to Johan Tungholm at TengTones Records for sending me the graphic of the album artwork, which had all of the information I needed. Now, I got to pronounce some Swedish names here, and we've got umlauts and acute accent marks here, so I'll try my best. On saxophones, Johan Hörlén. alto and soprano sax. Hörlén began playing clarinet at the age of 8, and from age 11 he also turned to the alto sax. He studied classical and jazz saxophone at the Royal Academy of Music in Stockholm. He was a member of the Stockholm Jazz Orchestra and also worked with the Trondheim Jazz Orchestra and the Norrbotten Big Band. And since 2011, he's been one of the soloists with the WDR Big Band in Cologne. On piano, we've got the American Billy Test. In 2011, he finished his bachelor's degree at William Patterson University with a double degree in jazz and classical piano. In 2015, he completed his master's degree at the Manhattan School of Music, and he's been a pianist and organist for the WDR Big Band since 2018. On bass, we've got Christian Spering, Swedish bassist who's played with a lot of Scandinavian musicians like Bobo Stenson and John Christensen, and international musicians like Paul Bley, Tom Harrell, and Kenny Wheeler. And on the drums, Bengt Stark, Swedish jazz drummer, composer, and arranger. He's a lecturer in drumming at the Royal Academy of Music in Stockholm. He's played with a lot of big names: Thad Jones, Barney Kessel, Tim Higgins, Clark Terry, Bobby Shue, Kenny Drew, Kenny Wheeler. The list goes on and on. This recording was recorded at Atlantis Studios in Stockholm on October 3rd and 4th, 2023. Recording engineer Nicholas Lindstrom, mixing Peter Danamo, and mastering Mats Aleklint. Recording's going to start out with a Hörlén original Kondo. He's on soprano sax for this one. The 48-measure sax melody flows smoothly over interestingly moving bass lines from Spering. We can get the melody in a minute sample, so let's take a listen to the start of this album. Spering is up first for an enthusiastic bass solo with a lot of agile melodic ideas. Billy Test follows with a great solo that really builds up momentum, and Hörlén's solo works to a nice climax too with tonal intensity. Let's check out some of that. To the final melody section, which works soon to vamping, and Stark gets to work up some drum energy before it comes down for the ending. Track 2 is an original by Christian Spering, Starry Nights. Hörlén's on alto sax for this one. The melody is attractive and airy, with an interesting structure of a repeating 21-measure section and a final 9 measures of more interval-centered phrases. Let's hear as much of it as we can in a minute. test solos first with two-handed moving lines and a sense of grace, and Spering's solo rings and reaches high, so let's hear him play on his own composition. Hörlén starts off with the first section of the melody for his solo and then works into improvisations, tying things together with the final section of the melody and a slowed ending made from the first melody phrase. Track 3 is a Billy Test original, The Watchman. Hörlén's back on soprano sax for this relaxed waltz tune. The sax melody is 32 measures, and he continues on for a solo. And let's hear some of Billy Test's magical piano touch on his own tune. And back to the melody from there. Track 4 is the title track, Straytrane, an original by drummer Bengt. There's an 8-measure intro with some nice fills from Test. The melody's 30 measures with Coltrane-esque chords and figures. Stark's light cymbal work and changing groove is great. Hörlén's on alto and continues on with the first solo. Test's solo has a neat descending line idea that he moves around before getting into some neatly stretched lines and some really swinging ideas too. Hörlén and Test trade eights with Stark on this one, so let's check out some of that interaction. To the melody from there, and Hörlén gets some final improvisations to a chilled-out ending. Track 5 is Tides, a Hörlén original composition. Test starts this one out solo with interesting rolled clusters of chords working into more flowing ideas. I'll jump in about a minute and a half in where the sax melody starts. It's a moody 24-measure waltz with interesting harmonic twists. Hörlén continues on with an improvised alto sax solo. Spering and Test both get solos on this one too. I'll leave you to check them out on your own. Track 6 is a Billy Test original, Coming Down Roses, and that's the title track of his 2021 recording that we discussed way back in episode 32 in October of 2021. Trios of Trios and Visionaries was the name of the episode. And we've heard him as a sideman on a lot of recordings since then. Pretty much whenever I see his name on a new release, I try to get one in the program. Hörlén's on soprano for the airy melody. The final phrase of the melody starts a measure earlier than you expect, making the length an interesting 31 measures, and Spering is up first for a solo. Let's have a listen. And let's check out some of Test's solo on his tune as well. Hörlén follows with a soprano sax solo. After another time through the melody, they vamp a bit for some drumming from Stark before the sax is back for a soft ending. Track 7, a Christian Spering original Relentless Dreams. Spering takes center stage here, getting the 3/4 melody lead on bass and continuing on with improvisations. Hörlén follows on alto sax, and Test's solo here has some great rippling lines that I'd like to sample as well. And the ending melody section is played on sax instead of bass, like we heard in the beginning. Track 8 is a Bengt Stark original Stain. This one is energetic and quirky with a melody of short phrases. The first part is 18 measures and then the second 17 measures before Hörlén's off on a sax solo. Test follows, working up percussive chords in his solo. Let's hear Stark's drum solo on his tune. And once more, through the melody, wraps things up. And the recording finishes up with a Bill Evans composition. Here is Something for You, a tune that was recorded by pianist Ileana Elias on Something for You. Ileana Elias sings and plays Bill Evans from 2008. The album includes two of Bill Evans' compositions that were recently discovered by her husband, bassist Mark Johnson, on a cassette that Evans gave him shortly before he died. Evanesque, and this tune, Here's Something for You, a bouncy swinging tune with a 36-measure melody taken by Hörlén on alto. The phrases lift and fall over the harmonies nicely. Let's check it out. And Test is up first there with a solo that has a lot of dazzling lines. Let's check out the sax solo on this final tune. And Spering gets the last solo on bass with lots of great melodic ideas before a final run through the melody. And that's the recording. These four musicians have a great intuitive sense of playing together and a lot of synergy. The overall atmosphere of the tunes is airy and uplifting, due in no small part to Stark's drumming style that has a lot of finesse and feels effortless. The program features originals by all the members, plus the final Lost and Then Found Bill Evans tune, and the synergy I mentioned makes them all go together and flow nicely, with good swing feels and some waltzes too. Hörlén has a pleasing alto tone and also sounds rich on soprano sax, with smoothly connected lines in his improvisations. Billy Test sounds amazing as always, with improvised ideas that surprise you for their creativity and also their technical difficulty, but he makes them all sound easy. Spering gets a lot of bass spotlight time too, and that's a good thing because his solos are particularly melodic, and Stark has a couple solo spots and places to crank up the energy along the way. His timekeeping and light cymbal work catch your ear throughout. Great playing and easily enjoyable music.
Yeah, I picked up on all those Billy Test spontaneous changes too. He's really great at that, just changing up the rhythmic line. The playing on the album, for me, sort of brought me to an after-hours club for the most part. This quartet favors down-tempo tracks, and it allows Billy Test to stretch out in the spaces left. I don't listen to him often, so I forget how creative he is.
Yeah.
He'll often introduce rhythmic changes spontaneously into his line, playing triplet chords after a more straightforward rhythm, and things like that. I like him a lot as a pianist. I also like Christian Spering's more discursive approach to solos on the bass. He seems to take a dialogue approach to shaping his solos, and they come across satisfyingly. The melodic center of the album is Johan Hörlén with his highly melodic sax solos. He'll go into quick figuration at times, but he's mostly melodic. Bengt Stark, on drums, steps out for a few tradings of eighths, and is rather understated for the most part, but generates some excitement when he wants to, as in Straytrane, where for me his solos stood out. There's variety on the record, but it's mostly on the slower side and makes a good nighttime listen.
All right, next let's come back to the U.S. for a recording on Cellar Music, trumpeter David Snyder, and it's just called Introducing. It came out October 24th. David Snyder comes from a musical family with a trumpet-playing father and an opera-singing mother. He graduated from the Frost School of Music in Miami, and he has a master's degree from Juilliard. He was the winner of the 2021 Carmine Caruso International Jazz Trumpet Competition. You can find the 2023 recording he made with his father, John Snyder, also on Cellar Music, appropriately titled Snide Remarks. From the Bandcamp notes, when Corey Weeds first approached me about this album, he told me, "I want young people swinging." So I happily hired the most swinging young people I know. I don't think there's anything more inspiring and authentic to the history of hard bop than that. This album is an homage to many of my favorite prodigious hard boppers such as Kenny Durham and Lee Morgan, but especially to people like Art Blakey. On the recording, David Snyder on the trumpet, Irena Terakubo on alto saxophone, Jacob Chung on tenor sax, Tyler Henderson on piano, Joey Ranieri on bass, and Willie Bowman on the drums. Executive producer Philip Palmer, who also wrote the album notes, and Corey Weeds, produced by Corey Weeds and David Snyder, recorded at Van Gelder Studios, Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey, on January 5th, 2025, engineered, mixed, and mastered by Maureen Sickler. We're going to start out with the Snyder original, Marvelous Lee, as in Lee Morgan. A little horn line lick opens it into an 8-measure intro section with playful rhythmic piano chords. It's a waltz in an AABA form with 16-measure A sections and an 8-measure B. A nice arrangement. Terakubo takes the B section. This sounds like a missing track from a 60s Lee Morgan recording. Chung solos first with a husky toned swinging tenor sax solo. And let's check out some of Snyder's solo that is full of Lee Morgan influence with little turns, staccato notes, and sassy licks. Henderson has a short piano solo too, and they pick it up from the B section with the melody to finish it up. Track 2, another Snyder original, Avale. Another 3/4 tune. Snyder is the only horn on this one. The melody has interesting phrasing and interval figures. It's 26 measures, and he continues on with an improvised solo. Really fantastic tone. His solo is expansive and builds on previous ideas nicely. Henderson follows with a piano solo that gets in some harmonic tension and works to smooth running lines. They get back to another round of the melody, but things carry on with more time for Snyder to play over a vamp, and the meter and groove switch up to a new 4/4 feel. Let's hear that transition. Like that to a placid ending. Track 3, Bye Bye Blackbird, a song by Ray Henderson and Mort Dixon that goes all the way back to 1926, famously recorded by Miles Davis on his 1957 album Round About Midnight. A nice piano opening from Henderson, and the saxes are back for a richly harmonized arrangement. Let's check it out. And let's hear some of Chung's great tenor tone on this one. Nice melodic ideas and a timeless style. Snyder's trumpet solo is lyrical and stylistically reminded me of both Kenny Durham and Blue Mitchell on this one. Henderson has a piano solo with a delicate touch too before they take it through the melody once again with some holds into a cadenza for Snyder to finish things up with. Very classy. Track 4, a Quincy Jones tune, Robot Portrait, from his 1962 album Quintessence that featured Freddie Hubbard. It's a seductively swinging minor tune. The 32-measure melody is phrased in a pattern of 8, 8, 4, 8, and 4 measures. Ranieri is up first on bass with fine melodic ideas and cool bluesy sentiments. Let's keep on listening. Snyder follows, channeling some more Lee Morgan-like sass on his solo here, especially in his articulation, and Terakubo follows with a really tart-toned solo. Ranieri keeps the bass walking for Bowman to do some drum work before a final time through the melody wraps it up. Track 5 is a Snyder original. The music is The Band Leader. Put on your hard bop helmet for this one. It's an AABA form with an extra 4 measures at the end, including a break into Terakubo's solo, and there's a lot of fun rhythmic change-ups along the way. Smoking solo. Snyder follows with an agile solo, and then Chung with speedy but smoothly connected lines. Let's check out some of Henderson's caffeinated piano solo on this one. strings and piano trade phrases with Bowman's drums before a final time through the melody. Track 6, a Snyder original, Mama Bear. Henderson makes a solo piano intro for this tune. Snyder's the only horn. He works the first section of the melody with Henderson, and I like how it continues, kind of like a theme and variation before he gets on to improvisations. Things work up to an exciting, swinging double-time feel, so let's hear some more of his playing later on. And things come down quietly for a bass solo from Ranieri. It ends up with one time through the 8-measure melody section from Snyder, and then once from Henderson with some final piano chimes. Track 7, another Snyder original, Tim and Bim. This is a cute one. The intro is made from the sparse final 4 measures of the repeating 16-measure melody that has neat little clipped rising intervals. Snyder takes it around once, and then the saxes join in for a neat arrangement the next time. Is up first for a solo on this one, and Tera Kubo follows, so let's hear some more of her playing. Chung gets a tenor sax solo on this one too. All the horns take it through the melody once with some repeats of the final phrase for some exchanges. And the recording ends up with track 8, Thelonious Monk's Hackensack, a tune he recorded in 1954. The notes say that Monk is Snyder's favorite musician. This is a fun Monk tune based around Gershwin's Lady Be Good. Bowman gets it going on the hi-hat, and they have Henderson take the AABA melody on piano, using the horns for interjections in a fun arrangement into a final section with a drum fill into a solo from Henderson with some neat two-hand coordination. And let's hear one more from Snyder for our final sample on the recording. Kubo has a searing solo too. They do some trading fours with Bowman before a final time through the melody wraps up the tune and the recording. David Snyder is a young trumpet player who has it all together. He shows his post-bop influences clearly on his debut as a leader with a strong nod to Lee Morgan, and you can hear other players' styles that have gone into making his concept. That's how you should really start your recording career, showing where you come from, and Snyder does it in a way that's stylish, exciting, and fresh sounding. His tone is great throughout, and he has nuanced articulation. His improvised solos are well structured and fun to listen to. His compositions fit nicely alongside classic tunes from Monk, Quincy Jones, and an old standard. Ballads and waltz feels make a nice variety, but things are never too far away from a good swinging section. On the tunes featuring Chung and Terakubo, the arrangements are entertaining, and they both contribute engaging and enthusiastic solos. Henderson's piano solos show a lot of variety and a classic style, and Ranieri and Bowman swing out with transforming grooves and little spots to show their personalities too. I'm really interested to hear where David Snyder goes next.
I think David Snyder has an ear for the jazz of the 1940s, and it's kind of an interesting comment because I'm going to say something similar about the next album we're going to hear too. There's an old-timey quality to overall approach. The inclusion of Bye Bye Blackbird only confirms this for me. That's our song from around that era. But you hear it right away in the opening of Marvelous Lee, the first track. The music on the album is all genial in the way a lot of the danceable jazz from the 1940s and 1950s was. David Snyder makes this album his calling card and shows a diverse approach to the instrument, playing hot, mellow, and appealingly on all styles. Irene Terakubo has certainly been listening to her old jazz records. She's got a very 1950s sound to her, and solos with energy, while Jacob Chung is a fine foil for her on the tenor sax. The three brass instruments even harmonize in a 1940s way that reminded me a bit of records like the Andrews Sisters and dance jazz like that. It was a surprising approach and one that shouldn't have so completely gone away. It was good to hear this and start thinking about all that jazz that really I heard in old movies and things like that. It really made me happy in the day. And this record made me happy too. Dave Snyder serves these styles well and is a versatile player on top.
Yeah, really great playing all throughout.
Mm.
All right, and one more from pianist Sean Mason, A Breath of Fresh Air.
Yeah.
On Taylor Christian Records.
And it was.
It certainly was. This came out October 24th. Pianist Sean Mason is from Charlotte, North Carolina. He started teaching himself piano at the age of 13, influenced by gospel music and Ray Charles. While attending the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, he met Branford Marsalis, who encouraged him to apply to Juilliard, where he was accepted, and he enrolled in 2018, also becoming active on the jazz scene in New York as well. He formed the quintet we'll hear on this recording in 2022, and it's the same lineup as played on his debut as a leader from 2023, The Southern Suite on Blue Engine Records. In 2024, he also made a collaborative album, My Ideal, with vocalist Catherine Russell, and that was on Dot Time Records if you want to check it out. On this recording, Sean Mason on piano and composing all the tunes, Tony Glaucy on trumpet, Chris Lewis on tenor sax, Felix Mosholm on bass, Domo Branch on the drums. Recording and mixing engineer Todd Whitelock, mixing supervisor Branford Marsalis, mastering engineer Mark Wilder, recording assistant Todd Carter, recording assistant as well Tiger Dieppe, editing engineer, mixing and mastering assistant Christopher Gold, and recording session manager Chantel Stewart. This was recorded at Bunker Studios in Brooklyn, New York on December 29th and 30th, 2024. The album gets started with a tune called Rediscovery. This opening tune will make you happy for sure. Lots of gospel influence, and the horn lines are buoyed by the rhythmic chords from Mason. New ideas keep coming along with surprises for 2 minutes, so we'll just be able to hear part of it. But let's hear this recording get started. Playful and more to come. Chris Lewis has the featured solo here with a gutsy swinging tenor sax solo that gets a little Latin twist at the end. Let's hear some of his playing. And it returns to the opening idea for an abbreviated final melody section. Track 2 is Secrets. Mosholm gets things going with a loping bass ostinato. There's a hushed quality to the minor melody horn lines that sneak around. It's a 32 measure length, but the horns peter out early in the last section, creating suspense with just Mason's chords going on. Glossy gets the first solo here with a trumpet solo that starts out sparsely and keeps a laconic character, but builds up steam and has some great rhythmic interaction with Mason. And Mason is next with a playful solo that has its own sparseness to pull you in before some rollicking chords, tremolos, and bluesy lines. Let's check out some of his playing. And the slinky spy theme melody is back from the horns to a subtle ending from Mason. Track 3 is Duende. Mason makes a little piano opening for this Brazilian field tune. It's another long arrangement with playful, ornamented little horn lines that lay out and come back in with new ideas. We'll just get to hear part of it in a sample. And Mosholm gets a bass solo as the main feature on this tune with happy melodic lines, so let's hear some of his playing. And the horns are back in with some interaction into a final melody section. Track 4 is bone back, bluesy and gospely with some New Orleans flavor. Mason makes a fun intro and the horn lines keep coming along. And Branch gets to have some drum fun from there, so let's just listen a little bit more. And Lewis is in with a sax solo. The horns are back with more of the melody riffs, and the ending brings back that cute piano opening with a final fresh horn line. Track 5, Open Your Heart, a change of mood with a ballad. This one will be hard to sample because there are a lot of things happening. The opening has Mosholm and Mason's left hand working together on flowing phrases with a surprising harmonic change a little ways in. Legato horn lines then flow in. Let's hear about that much of it. A section of shorter horn lines over soft staccato piano chords comes along, and things smooth out again into a fluid sax solo from Lewis. Glaucy follows with a neatly articulated solo. A return to the opening idea leads to a playful solo from Mason over unhurried but snappy bass lines. Let's hear some of his playing there. And the staccato chord section is back with horns and more playful ideas from Mason to a flowing and quiet ending. This tune will keep you guessing, and you'll have to hear the whole tune to see how it all fits together. Track 6 is Unfinished Business. A funky straight feel with a bass heartbeat gets this going. Mason joins in before the bluesy horn lines get started. It's a repeating 16-measure idea with some great drum fills from Branch. Going around again there, and Glousy's up first for a bluesy solo, so let's check him out on this one. And the horn melody is back with repeated final phrases to a quiet ending. Track 7 is Capital J. This one sounds like it takes a few espressos to play. The speedy melody has odd phrasings that keep pushing ahead with new ideas constantly coming along over 64 measures, and then simultaneous horn improvisations erupt out. Mason joins in with some improvised ideas too, and they never stop until the melody head comes around again to a surprisingly placid ending. And the recording ends up with track 8, Kiss Me. Fun gospel infusion in a sublime way with a lot of space between the horn phrases that come along. The whole horn arrangement takes about 2 minutes to play out, so we can just hear the first part of it. After the melody, Glaucy and Lewis get some improvised trading, so let's hear a little bit of their interaction. They join back in on the arranged lines there. They get lifting modulations to a final section that has a sparser character to it and an ending that's got a cute old-time R&B idea in the bass and piano. Let's just hear how this recording finishes up. And that's it. A Breath of Fresh Air is an appropriate title for this recording. Old-time gospel and blues moods are presented in fresh new ways in Mason's compositions that have extended, evolving horn line arrangements that keep bringing in new ideas and changing feels. He gives most of the solo spotlight to his sidemen, with fine solos from Glaucy on trumpet and Lewis on tenor sax throughout. Mason is indeed the mood maker, though, creating the new atmospheres and constantly catching your ear with tasty ideas underneath everything else that's going on. Mosholm and Branch work tightly together and get solo spots as well. It's really a group effort, though, since the ensemble is working together through thoughtfully arranged sections most of the time. It all comes off with enthusiasm and a sense of joy that's shared easily by the listener.
There was a time when jazz tracks would make the album charts, the popular album charts in the 50s and 60s. And these are the kind of jazz tracks that would have fit in at that time and might have made the charts back in the day. They're all kind of melodic and catchy and short as well. These tracks are usually around 4 minutes, 5 minutes long, and they would have fit on the radio back then. They could have fit on a 45 RPM record. I think they could have made the top 40 in the 1950s and early 1960s when jazz was sharing chart space with rock and roll. All of it is melodically appealing with solid and very versatile rhythmic patterns to the tracks. Sean Mason has a deep knowledge of the piano vocabulary of past jazz and plays appealingly with memorable lines in his solos. He starts out the record with an old-timey feel and goes into various blues and gospel-type licks throughout the album, even showing a bit of classical influence at the opening of Open Your Heart. Trumpeter Tony Glaucy and saxophonist Chris Lewis, or as the British would say, saxophonist, bring the old school too with their often breathy approaches to the instruments. They're both capable of exquisite gentleness of tone when called for, and occasionally solo together like a New Orleans brass band, as in Capital J. The album brings back memories of an older time, and I think we missed that today. I said that with the previous album too. I'm glad that time isn't forgotten by contemporary jazz musicians.
Yeah, I like jazz that's cerebral, but I always want to have a tie to the blues and with good swinging rhythms. You can't go wrong with that.
I like both, though, because sometimes you just want to be happy and hear that great swing rhythm and some good soloing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that'll wrap things up for episode 234. A lot of interesting music here to check out. I hope you listen to all of these albums in their entirety. But we must move on, as always. And we've got a program lined up for next week already. So what's on the menu for episode 235 in the classical half, Mike?
Speaking of music that would sort of, I guess, fit in the top 40, I've got like a set of albums that contain a potpourri of pieces. Oh. That might even be our episode title next week. We'll have to see. Anyway, the first one is called simply B-A-C-H, so Bach, and it's an album of Bach, by the clarinetist Martin Frust and friends, I guess you can say. And it's a set of individual tracks. Really, it's kind of like a Bach's greatest hits in a way that can be played on the clarinet. So this isn't really cerebral classical music, although Bach's works are complicated enough. But these are popular enough that you'll recognize them, and they're not going to challenge you with multi-movements. But that's okay. We'll talk about that next week. This is kind of more of a popular release. We also have an album called Latin Connections by the Aquarelle Guitar Quartet, and they're playing music by Latin composers, many of them contemporary on this album, so we're going to have a lot of contemporary music next week. And speaking of contemporary music, the Da Vinci Classics label has an album by Alessia Scilipolti on the flute, playing contemporary works for flute, breath, and voice. Boy, the breath and the voice along with the flute. And the album is called Fragile, and I'm really curious to see what's going to be on there. I do like the flute. These are contemporary works. We have no idea what awaits us.
All right, over on the jazz side, I've got an album that should be a good bridge to the two halves of the program. You know, we always hope that our listeners listen to both halves of the program, but you never know if some people are only into classical or only into jazz. Well, here's one that should appeal to both. It's by pianist Roy Powell. It's just called Aria. It's on Lawson Records, but it's based around melodies from Puccini.
Oh, excellent.
So that'll be interesting to check out.
Can't go wrong with a Puccini melody.
Absolutely not.
Andrew Lloyd Webber knows better than anybody.
He's got a couple of Italian compatriots on there, and then we'll keep the Italian mood going with a pianist who's gotten a lot of attention, Alessandro Lanzoni and his Vida. That's on the Fresh Sound New Talent label. And we'll come back to the U.S. to check out drummer Brandon Sanders' new recording on Savant, Lasting Impression. We checked out his debut album a couple years ago, so we'll see where he is now. And he's got Jasmia Horn as guest vocalist on a couple tracks there as well.
I haven't heard her in a while. I'm kind of looking forward to that.
So it'll be a well-rounded program, something for everyone.
You know, I once asked an opera singer about like Andrew Lloyd Webber, and he was complaining, Andrew Lloyd Webber got all of his melodies from Puccini. And then I asked him, well, where did Puccini get them from, rather naively? And he didn't say anything. He just pointed to the sky.
Oh. There was no AI to get melodies from back then. So.
Right. Okay. But there was Puccini.
And the greater intelligence, All right. Thanks, as always, to Fast Signs of Staten Island for our glowing neon logo. And we'll be back again next week. If you want to check out these recordings as we're listening to them, they'll be up on our Deezer playlist, and also put a link to that on our Facebook page. Any final thoughts, Mike?
Well, I came into this podcast feeling all stressed out, but then hearing all this great music again just kind of energized me again. And that's just as well, because I still have work to do. So I can't go to bed yet.
But we had a little breath of fresh air with music.
Right. A 3-hour breath of fresh air. Breath of fresh air. So that's pretty nice.
All right. We'll be back to do it again next week. So until then, keep listening, and we'll see you again next time.